I don't believe in secret meetings because there's no reason to. And then another thing, there's a codified expression. If two black people know it, it's not a secret. One of them's going to tell it. Now, that may or may not be true, but that is the basic and the safe and the logical position to take. Now, the second thing is, what do you need a secret for? You don't need secrets when you're trying to do the correct thing. You stand up before the whole world and say, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is the goal that I'm setting, and this is how I intend to do it. You tell the whole world that. Tell it to white people, tell it to non-white people. Why? Because you're trying to produce a product called justice. You're going to make an excuse. It's only when you're trying to do something that you shouldn't be doing you need secrets. The white supremacists believe in secrets because they have to be deceptive, and they have a treacherous agenda. Counter-racism is not treachery. It's cleaning up mess. And you stand before the whole world at high noon and announce it. This is where I'm going, and this is how I intend to get there. Now, does anybody have a problem with it? Because if they have a problem with it, sorry about that. I'm going anyway. Unquote. So what's all the secrecy about? Patting people down in the door and all this type of stuff, and and sneaking around behind bushes. And well, who are you hiding from, and for what? You can't hide from the people who really got power because they know where you are. That's who you pay your rent to, the white supremacists. It's nothing that you do that they don't know about or can't find out. So when they send other black people around, you're down by the riverside, and you're saying what you got to say, you just welcome them down. Any white people show up, welcome them down too. So what? Saying what you got to say. Everybody just stand up and be counted. And be counted for doing what? The correct thing. You're trying to clean up mess. Why make an excuse for trying to clean up mess? It's not logical. They say, well, people who don't want the mess cleaned up will hurt you. Well, they can hurt you anyway. That goes with the territory. You stand up and say it anyway. I mean, we're saying it now. We're talking now. We're talking the same thing. Why do we need to hide in order to say what we're saying right this minute to the entire world? Well, that's really all we're saying. Replace racism with justice. The racists allow me to do that. They can kill me anytime. But they're not likely to do it until it starts taking effect. They don't care what black people do as long as it's not effective. That's why black people love to bunch together and pretend that they're doing something great. The white supremacists take one look and say they're just doing what they usually do, blowing off steam. And after they get through talking about what they're going to do to me and get tired of it, they're going to turn on each other before the meeting's over. Because we know them. We know them. We know how they think. We know what they're going to do before they even know. Because we are greater thinkers than they ever will be. We teach them what they know. They don't know anything except what we know. And what they do know, that we know, we taught them. So we don't really have to watch them that close. We just glance at them every now and then. Not worried about them. That's the white supremacist position. That's why they're supreme. They're not amateurs. They're real pros. They're big league. We haven't gotten off the side a lot. Whatever it was, it didn't work. And that's evident. Whatever it was, when the first person, whoever that was, got the idea of establishing a system of white supremacy, might have been a committee of people, Might have been just one person just going around telling other people, we should start a system of racism. Somebody started it. That's evident. We see the results of it. When it started, how it started, I don't know. People argue about it. They write all kinds of books about it. I just tell the truth. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know the name of the person or what his cousin's name was, any of that. I wasn't there, but I've heard different arguments about it. But somebody started it, and it turned out to be the most powerful idea that the world has ever seen, the idea of racism in the form of white supremacy. It's the most powerful religious and political idea ever thought of in recorded history. Why do I say it's the most powerful? Because it's powerful now. Now, somebody might say, naturally, people have said, oh, at one time, it didn't even exist. At one time, nothing existed. That's not the argument. That doesn't get you anything, to say at one time it doesn't exist, if you stop and think about it logically. Just suddenly just sitting down and say everything is just fine because at one time it didn't exist. That's not even inspirational. Because at one time, nothing existed, logically speaking. And something even brought nothing into existence. So what kind of frame of reference is that? So the purpose for studying history is to find out where the mistakes were made that brought the world into the kind of chaos like it is now. Where were the mistakes made? By whom? And try to do everything you can not to repeat those mistakes. Now, when people ask me, what is my history? I give a codified answer, what I call an argument settler, because that's what codification is supposed to be. You don't need a long argument. Just make one or two statements and that takes care of it. Not long speeches that go on and on and on and on and on. And the thing that I say is something logical and something that sounds like it's got to be true. Sounds like it's true. My history is everything that ever happened before the beginning of time and since. So there's nothing to brag about, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Because I'm talking about everything that ever happened before the beginning of time and since. But since I have appeared here, I don't have anything to brag about, but I got plenty to be ashamed of. And what I should be ashamed of is having solved these problems in the time that I've been here. Because that's where that part of my history started. It started with me when I was born. But before I was born, that's my history too. Every rock that ever turned over on the moon, every shooting star that existed 80 trillion years ago is a part of my history. Why? Because it happened before I got here. It's 80 trillion years ago. That's my history. Why? Because it happened before I appeared in the universe. Now, a person might say, well, logically speaking, if you go that way, that's everybody's history. And I say, true. So now you're putting history in perspective. Yes, that's everybody's history. Now what you're going to do? History is everything that ever happened before you got here. Everything. Everybody who ever made a canoe. Everybody who ever chased a rabbit. Everybody who ever went to sleep at night. That's your history. It happened 80 trillion years ago. That's your history. Doesn't make any difference who it was that went to sleep and woke up in the morning. It's still your history because it happened before you. 2 minutes ago is your history. Anything that happened anywhere in the universe 8 seconds ago is your history. Well, maybe it might not be your history. Depends on what you want to look at, whether or not you want to put it in a box. But it's certainly my history. According to what? According to logic. It has to be my history. I mean, how can you put history in a box? History is everything that ever happened. Any kind of history. Everything that ever happened. Every cat that ever climbed a tree in 2008 is a part of my history. Why? Because it happened. And I was here when it happened. And even if I hadn't been here, if I was just born today, it would be a part of my history because it did happen. The cat did climb the tree. Now, a person might say, well, no, your history is only what you had something to do with. Well, if you look at it like that, logically speaking, how many people can look at just what they did since they have been here and say that's all of their history? Just what they did. The number of times that they crossed the street, the number of times that they caught a bus, the number of times that they drove a car. Well, if you look at history that way, you haven't done very much with the history that you have. But if you're going to include other people and other things and other environments, you're really talking about the beginning of time and even before the beginning of time. According to what? According to logic. Because if we're going to solve problems, that's the first thing we should start looking for, logic, which is what white supremacists say is something that black people can't deal with. They say that is the main difference between a white supremacist and a Negro. A Negro is not logical. Their minds won't stretch that far. They always think in little tiny boxes.